This is the third time I've been to Gaza since the war started on October the 7th, and it is by far the worst we've seen the conditions in Gaza. Not only has there been a huge increase in bombing, but there has also been a huge increase in the number of casualties that we're seeing. We're seeing so many more small children being affected by this war now, plus the fact that the population has effectively been starved since the 2nd of March, so we're seeing all the problems from malnutrition. The main things that we're seeing is not just muscle wasting and loss of fat. We're seeing that the children are specifically affected. They're a lot smaller than they would be for their Western counterparts. They lack the essential nutrients and vitamins for normal cell turnover, so none of them are healing their wounds in a timely fashion. We're debriding huge burn and blast injuries, and we are trying to reconstruct them, and we would expect to see far better healing than we're actually seeing. As well as that, malnutrition affects the immune system, and that's been really difficult for this mission. We're seeing a lot more infections than we've ever seen before. That's due to the malnutrition, but also due to the fact that there's been no medical aid into Gaza since the 2nd of March. So we haven't had any replenishment of our stores here at NASA. Currently, we are out of 47% of all essential drugs. And in my operating theatre, we have 3 different types of antibiotic available now. None of them are the antibiotic that I would choose if I was in London to treat the sorts of wounds that I'm seeing here in Gaza. What this means is that children are dying unnecessarily from overwhelming sepsis, which would ordinarily be far more treatable if they were in the Western world. I think the worst thing that I've seen have been multiple. There's been multiple terrible things that I've seen on this trip. It is mainly the children. It's really small children, ages sort of 6 and 7, when they come in and they've had half of their arm blown off, or their knee blown off, or part of their face blown off. And these are sometimes really beautiful little girls that will be scarred for life now. And then when they're on your operating table, somebody will tell you that they've been involved in an injury, in a bombing, and in that bombing, all of their relatives have died. So this child now on my operating table has none of their siblings nor their parents alive. And that's not just one story. In fact, that's happened so many times, it's almost become normal. There are 42,000 orphans here in Gaza at the moment, and they've been orphaned by this war in horrific ways, most of them with disfiguring, life-changing injuries. So we got news at about 7:30 in the morning that there had been an incident at the GHF aid distribution centre near Rafah. And by the time our operating list started, the emergency department was swamped. We had 28 people brought to us dead, most of them by ambulance, but some are brought in on donkey carts. We had 5 people die in the emergency department, and we had over 200 people who had been injured by a gunshot wound. The department itself was absolutely overrun. There were patients on the floor, all the beds were full. It was absolute chaos. The theatre complex here in the Ayaseen building stopped all operating and concentrated on taking the casualties. There's 5 operating rooms in this block. The 2 theatres downstairs on the ground floor blocks stopped operating and started taking all the casualties, and they closed one of the theatres in the maternity block just to deal with the wounded. We also managed to transfer some patients out to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society hospital, who's had a large section of skin taken out the back of his calf and thigh. And he told me that basically he had arrived at the GHF distribution centre very early in the morning because they were told it would open the doors at between 7 and 8, and I think a lot of the Palestinian people are very hungry and they wanted to ensure a place that at the front of the queue, so they started queuing at around 2 o'clock, and I think the crowd was overwhelming for the distribution centre, and gunshot broke out, and he was shot at around 3 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't until about 5 o'clock in the morning that somebody came to his aid, and then he made the journey to Nasser. And that's not an easy journey to make, because we are virtually in the active fighting zone, and as I said, we are not the closest centre to the Rafah distribution centre. Most of the injured people were shot in the chest or torso and abdomen. That seemed to be the bulk of it. We did see some injuries to limbs, but mainly upper limbs, so the lower limb injuries weren't the most common thing. The bullets that have been removed are full metal jacket bullets, so they could be from any sort of military operation, really. The stories are being denied by the IDF, and there is a story that it's Palestinians shooting each other, but we haven't really seen that before here. We have seen shooting by Hamas when locals try to loot the aid vehicles, but when that happens, they don't tend to shoot directly at the people, so it would be very unusual to receive somebody in a local skirmish like that that's taken a gunshot directly to their chest or abdomen. They normally fire at the ground or into the air, so people that have been caught by stray bullets in those sort of events tend to have peripheral limb injuries, which isn't what we saw this time. There's also some difficulty as to what went on, because shortly after that mass casualty, we received victims from another mass casualty in Mawasi, where a tank had fired at a group of tents, and when the locals went to try and give aid to the people who had been injured, a second tank fire went off and even more people were injured. We know that 90 people were taken to the Kuwait hospital, which again is a field hospital, and they were given essential first aid, and a lot of those victims then came on to Nasser later that evening. So we did see people requiring amputations and treatment for other injuries after that, and I suppose at this time it does all become a blur. It's just a constant stream of people being shot and blown up, really. It's very difficult to say exactly what the weapon is that's caused the most injury, because it's a bomb, and I'm not au fait with the different types of bombs, but there have been some devastational explosions where huge parts of the body, limbs, hands, feet, have been blown off, and that seems to be very common here in Gaza at the moment. I think the message that I would leave is that we will continue doing everything we can to get the story out there of what's happening here. It's very difficult to come from the Western world and know that there is so much footage of the atrocities that are going on here in mainstream media. It's everywhere that you look, and I find it, well, embarrassing isn't the word, I'm ashamed that not more is being done. And I think the message is that I will continue doing everything I can to try and change the attitudes of the Western world so that they get involved, give you the help that you need, and stop this war.